Okay, thanks very much indeed. So, welcome back to two of our speakers, and also welcome to Adrian Gillespie from Scottish Enterprise. I thought I'd just start off pitching Adrian straight into it. Adrian, what are your reflections upon what you've just heard, and any comments that you'd like to add before we go into the full panel session?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Malcolm. Well, I mean, I think, like the rest of you, I was just blown away by the amount of innovation, the amount of engineering excellence, and just the huge potential that this unlocks in terms of the future of the industry. As the Minister was saying, innovation forms a very key part of the oil and gas strategy. The oil and gas strategy has been very important in that it guides the public sector to come in and support along the businesses, the industry's priorities. Now, increasing recovery rate is something we've been talking about through the industry leadership group that Melfort Campbell chairs and has been developing this strategy with us, and the need to just continuously drive increases in recovery rates. Using Norway as a bit of a benchmark, and I noticed they've now recently increased that up to 60% targets. So, just driving innovation, I think, is very important. One thing that did occur to me, that in light of so much of this innovation that's going on, one of the issues we've had in Scottish Enterprise is that we don't really get an awful lot of approaches to support research and development in this sector, which doesn't really make sense, really, in terms of the size of this sector, the amount of innovation that clearly is going on. And our role in that would be to support it, to help it happen faster, to help it happen where it's not going to happen otherwise. So I'm very committed to surfacing more projects that we can support. And that's what really underlies the innovation call. The innovation call was something that we established as an approach. It's worked in other sectors, and what it's really trying to do is to stimulate thought around where is the biggest potential for innovation, to publish research and to publish the kind of scope for where people feel that innovation exists, and then to try and get companies, particularly small companies, to come forward with ideas, which we can then support them through feasibility, make introductions to partners, and ultimately fund research and development projects. There's a huge amount of support available for R&D projects. We launched the first innovation call just a few months ago on asset integrity and reliability. That closed last week. We've had 20 applications, which I think is a pretty good start. So that would be 20 R&D projects coming forward that probably wouldn't have come forward at all had we not gone about it in this way. So we will continue to do that. There will be further calls next year, working very closely with ITF, which again is a big part of our competitive advantage, having ITF here. And there will be further calls that reflect the conversation we've had this morning on subsea, on imaging technology. These are the kind of areas that we have to build a very strong competitive advantage in this area if we're going to secure the long-term growth of the industry here. So for me, overall, Malcolm, I think tremendously inspired by the discussions this morning. For me personally, a desire for us to do more and to be involved in stimulating more R&D in the sector along these areas where clearly the potential exists for that to happen.
Thanks very much, Adrian. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the secret of these breakfast briefings is having really excellent speakers, and we didn't let ourselves down there this morning either. Right, these are in no particular order, but this was actually the last question that was given to me, and it's going to be the first I asked, just it's on the top of the pile. And listen carefully, because it's not an easy one. Given some of the new technologies for enhanced oil recovery, etc., require significant power requirements, or have significant power requirements, does the panel feel that the current direction of European legislation on penalising emissions from power generation offshore is stifling the development of these technologies? Okay, so that's a nice easy one to start with. Glenn, do you want to have a...
Well, you got that right. That's not easy. I think there is a lot more we can do around power offshore. A lot of platforms have a power deficit. A few platforms have a power surplus. Most of the power, or much of the power, is generated through gas. and it's true that they're being looked at, and they should be looked at. I think I could take a counter-argument and say that imposing carbon emissions on power generation offshore could lead to further innovation. So a number of operators, Shell included, are looking hard at both, well, primarily at wind on unmanned installations, and I think we should go and maximise that potential. And actually, it is, from an economic point of view, quite an attractive alternative in quite a number of settings. Actually, offshore wind is expensive, but if you're offshore already, it's not much different to onshore wind. So, I think the answer to that question would be no. I don't think it's going to stifle innovation. I think it's going to potentially stimulate innovation.
Very good. Thanks very much, Glenn. Paddy, do you want to come in on that one?
No, I don't have comments.
Right, no. Okay. I'm going to start with Adrian for this one, because I think this is what one's made for you, Adrian. Gas-fired power stations, good for Scotland, which was quoted by Glenn Cayley. How does this sit with the Scottish Government's policy and an initiative for 100% green renewable energy by 2020?
Yep, very comfortably. I mean, I think sometimes that policy is perhaps misunderstood. I mean, the target there is to have 100% of our energy requirements, not 100% of our energy generation. So, the implication being that we will obviously generate more than 100% and export the difference. Alongside that, you need baseload, and gas is very much one of the technologies that's identified for that baseload, with a progression towards CCS around that gas generation. So I think there's absolutely no conflict there at all, and it's actually part of the energy mix.
Power generation
absolutely,
story going
yes.
forward.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Paddy, I think we'll start with you on this one. The subsea business is currently stretched, and more projects are going over budget and or schedule. Therefore, how can we grow the business by another 100%?
Yes, that's a challenging one. How can we grow the business by another 100%?
Yeah. Given that there's a lot of stretch in the business at the moment.
I mean, we do have the issue of trying to attract more people into the industry. That's for sure. We need more resources. We're all quite busy at the moment. I do agree that we're stretched as an organisation, but we have been looking at ways, and even within Wood Group Kenny, we have been looking at ways of how we can bring people from outside the industry, including the military, and I always say about subsea engineering that it includes aspects of civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical process, etc. So even, for example, if you think of the construction industry and civil engineers, there must be an ability to use those skills and easily bring those skills into our industry. I guess the Minister talked about it this morning is in terms of perception. We do have a problem with the perception of our industry. I don't think people see the longevity of the industry like we see it, both internationally and here in the UK sector. And I think that's certainly one thing we need to do, is work on the perception, because there are engineering skills out there that we can make use of. So that's probably something to look at.
Thanks, Paddy. Glenn, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think part of the answer was in Paddy's talk. It's the sort of keep it simple, stupid approach, where there's far, far more we can do in standardising subsea solutions, whereas the tendency is to start with a blank piece of paper and basically perform feed work on a bespoke solution, whereas there may be an 85% solution that's quicker, cheaper, and going to require far less resources.
Yep,
okay,
that's
thanks.
true.
Adrian, do you have anything to add on that?
No, not particularly. I think.
Okay, no problem. This one's for you, Glenn. what role do we'll ask the others as well, I think, maybe. But what role do the majors and the super majors have to play in bringing the UK yet to find resources to market? Do they have a role?
Yeah, I think the super majors do have a role, although the medium and small entrepreneurial explorers, I think, also play a vital part. So the owners of major infrastructure, which still includes a number of super majors and IOCs, I think have the opportunity and really should seize the opportunity to maximize the satellite potential of exploration tiebacks that are near field, near infrastructure. And I think, we do a reasonable job, but we could do a better job with respect to taking what we learn about reservoirs at the reservoir scale and effectively recycling that back into exploring for new opportunities. I do think we have a problem industry-wide across the UK continental shelf, and it's sort of around appraisal. There's about somewhere between 100 and 150 discoveries which are currently discovered and undeveloped, and many unappraised. And I do think they fall in a bit of a funding gap between small companies struggling to find funds to appraise and perhaps larger companies either getting them on their priority list or finding them material enough to chase after. But there is no doubt in my mind that if we don't feed the front end of the funnel with some successful exploration, it's going to be very tough to get close to sustaining the production engine in the North Sea.
Okay, thanks very much. Here's one of those interesting questions. This is for each of you, if I might. If you had to choose, what do you feel is the single most important piece of technology that will maximise the value of the North Sea going forward? What's the top of your list for technology development for maximising the UKCS? Yeah? Who wants to start?
I'll have
go
a
on.
crack.
Okay. We'll start with you, Glenn, then we'll come to Adrian, then we'll go to
okay. Last year, the UK oil and gas production declined 19%. And my understanding is that we're on track to decline possibly 12% on that already very low number. Yet the reservoir decline, the base decline, if you will, in the basin, remains in single digits. And the delta between these high numbers and really what we should be seeing is all about the performance of our infrastructure and our assets. And so, as a geologist, it pains me to say I have to abandon all the sexy stuff around geophysics and even some of the innovative well drilling stuff and really stick to our knitting when it comes to better management of our assets. And more than anything else, it's getting deeper insights into the condition of our principal hubs and assets and subsea kit, knowing our assets are safe to continue operating. And Shell, like many operators, are dealing with unexpected surprises that are impairing reliability and availability of our assets. And in my view, the area of technology which is the ripest is around just that. It's better inspection. It's knowing in much greater clarity where the risks are and developing our risk-based asset management program and getting it to a position where we really have an entirely different set of metrics around availability and reliability of the assets. If the medical industry can perform the kind of imaging and inspection that they've achieved over the last 15 or 20 years, I'm sure we can do a better job of understanding our umbilical risers and many of our flow lines. So,
very good, Graham. Adrian, you wanted to come in next?
Please.
Oh, go on, Paddy.
Well, just a few things to kind of take up on the points about that. I mean, absolutely, I agree with that. And I think on the subsea side and the project I talked about, SURF-IM, certainly we're creating an environment in which operators are talking more about how they're operating their subsea systems and what issues are there, and that's good in terms of trying to move the thing forward. But one thing, though, that you do see is, I sit on an OTC committee organising, looking at flexible riser technology, and I know that the presentations that are being talked about in terms of where the technology is at is already probably a year and a half or 2 years out of date, or there are some issues out there in the North Sea that we're aware of that we simply can't talk about it. And I guess, do we need to kind of create a culture, somehow create a culture where we're in some kind of fora able to talk about the issues sooner, get them out into the industry, and therefore be able to act on them. So that's a little bit towards the integrity piece. I think the other thing that I was trying to two kind of other themes is, do we have a plan for the North Sea? Do we have a view of how we're going to shape that, what we want to do with it? And I guess we are. But it wasn't as clear to me, as I say. It seemed to me that, at least looking on the other side of the pond, that they had a much clearer, more direct thing. And I think the other point we talked today a little bit about, and rightly so, of continuing to incentivise and to work with the SMEs and to help them develop the technology. But I think we cannot forget about the larger companies within our industry, in terms of the larger contractors and the operators. They have a very important role to play in terms of shaping that, and we need to also look at initiatives, if you like, that encourage, get us all going in the right direction.
Thanks, Paddy. Adrian, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, for longer term, medium and longer term development, I think EOR for the North Sea could be a huge win for the Scottish economy. The CCS demonstration project at Peterhead is a very important part of that, potentially. First of all, in terms of proving the CCS technology on gas, and also the storage potential of the North Sea. Longer term, if we can utilise that CO2 for EOR, then we've just got a win all round in terms of establishing a price for carbon, potentially providing long-term storage from power generation across Europe in the North Sea. But utilising that CO2 could just be tremendously beneficial for the Scottish economy.
Okay. You mentioned EOR. Here's now our EOR-related question. Is it not shameful that we're still decommissioning fields with much more oil left in place than we recovered from them? Should not a minimum recovery rate be a shared government-industry target? We're all nodding. Paddy, do you want to?
Well, it would seem to me that that's a good idea, but I'm not an expert in the whole kind of reservoir area, so maybe that's more. Maybe Glenn can come in there better than I can, but some kind of shared vision certainly is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, it's difficult and hazardous to generalise. So some fields you're never going to get more than 20% back. Other fields, Draugen in Norway, we're on our fourth 4D seismic programme, and we have recovered 73% of the oil in place. And I think we're in the high 60s on Brent. Whereas, others will be abandoned with a much smaller fraction. I think the more important question is, do we really understand, if you like, the staircase to maximising technical recovery? And the answer, I think, for most operators is there's work yet to be done. So the technical limit needs to be understood. And then the enablers, in terms of primarily economics and the fiscal environment, that would need to be in place to take those additional steps. And they start with well and reservoir management. They go on to infill. I mean, most of our reservoirs, by global standards, are under-drilled. Water flood has been a huge beneficial enabler in this basin, but actually there's a lot more can be done. And actually, all of this discussion about EOR is predicated, for the most part, on a well-managed and well-executed water flood. So I think the next big step, besides lower-cost infill, is getting on top of the voidage replacement and the performance of our water flood, and also being a bit more innovative on subsea water flood.
Very good, very good. Adrian, anything you want to add to this?
I think we do have a target. Well, we do have a target for that now, certainly in Scotland, in terms of moving towards 50% recovery rates. That's set out in the strategy, and there's not one answer to that, but it's got to very much be a focus. I'm not sure it's shameful. I mean, companies are taking these decisions within the environment that they work in, but certainly, we would want to see fewer decommissioning if that's at all possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I can say I was talking to Trevor Garlick in the break, and we agreed that EOR is a good subject for a breakfast here. So watch out. I think early in the new year we'll be having a breakfast focusing upon that. It's well known that the oil and gas industry is facing a skills shortage. Does the Scottish and UK government not suffer from similar skills shortages regarding the energy sector, and what are they doing to address this? So that's talking about regulatory skills shortage. Adrian, I'm going to start with you, right, and then I'll go straight along Paddy and then to Glenn.
Well, I can't speak for the Scottish Government, obviously. I'm a related agency. The Scottish Government doesn't have devolved powers for regulation, so I think why would they bring those skills in? Were that to change, I'm sure they would. But I think in terms of Scottish Enterprise's experience, we do find it more difficult to recruit for energy skills in the North East because what we can afford to pay compared to what the industry can afford to pay is very different. So. I think that is a constant challenge for us here, certainly more of a challenge than it is in other parts of the country. So, yes, it's difficulty. What we are very open to is secondments from industry. We haven't had it in oil and gas. It's something I would like to see happen more. I'd like people to come into our team for a period of 6 months to a year, and through that we'll get a very, very good overview of what's happening right across the industry, right across Scotland and the UK. So if anybody's interested in doing that, I'd be very happy to
that is going on in the UK government, I can tell you, and there are some important secondments into DEC at the moment. Although it's impossible, surely, to contemplate a regulator that's totally staffed by industry secondees. There's a limit to that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Paddy, do you want to come in on this one? What about the regulatory skills shortage, and what should be done about it?
Just, Malcolm, can I just clarify the question? You mean regulatory? What do you mean by? You mean?
Sorry, the regulator is the people of the Department of Energy and DEC and their equivalents in Scotland.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can make a comment on how, as you say, how you can kind of resolve that.
Let's move on to Glenn. Glenn, have you got a thought on this?
The answer is there is a skills shortage. I think HSE is probably suffering even more than DEC. We've certainly made a secondment in the last few weeks into DEC on the subsurface side, but I think if they're reliant on secondments and secondees, we're not going to fill the gaps. I do think, though, there is an opportunity. If you look at the demographics of our industry, they're absolutely appalling. So I'm in my late 50s, and I've got a lot of compadres who are about the same age, and I think a subset of late career professionals in a whole host of disciplines, for example well engineering and well services, could be attracted into key roles, key technical roles, to better support government agencies and ensure that we have fit for purpose and well founded regulatory discussions and outcomes. So my sense is that we could do more. I think the skills are there, and a subset would be probably interested in a second career, with government. They just have to be a little bit more creative about attracting.
Thanks very much. Very interesting thought. Right, final question, and really, sort of 30 seconds each on it, max. We talked a lot about the production side of this. What about exploration? What can be done to improve the exploration outlook for the UKCS? And again, if we could get to sort of one issue for that. What can be done to improve the exploration outlook for the UKCS? Glenn?
Drill more wells.
Yeah. Fine. Paddy? Don't say drill more wells.
No, can't make a comment, sorry.
Adrian, anything?
one of our most successful university spin-outs was a exploration company. I think more innovation, more collaborative R&D. I mean, that was a big focus of the discussion this morning. Collaborative R&D is also something that Scottish Enterprise can support. It tends to be supported by the Technology Strategy Board in the UK. We're trying to get them more interested in oil and gas. In the meantime, all the powers that they use to support that are powers available to Scottish Enterprise, and we would be delighted to support good collaborative projects that come forward. But you know,
Great.
Better academic research, continuing to improve in our advantage in that area, continuing companies to take the benefit of that and spin it out into industry.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and thank you all, and thank you for those splendid and some of those nice difficult questions as well that you gave there. But I've got to bring it to a conclusion at that point. I start by thanking on your behalf each of our speakers, to Glenn Cayley, to Paddy O'Brien, to Fergus Ewing, who's now departed, and also Adrian Gillespie. And could you possibly show your appreciation in the usual way to him?